When I read my parents' will and saw they left everything to our cousin, the real son, I quietly stopped paying their bills. Weeks later, Mom texted, "Transfer the mortgage money." I simply replied. I stood in the middle of the living room with the paper in my hands and felt the floor disappear beneath me. A will, a real one, with a notary's seal, all the property, the whole house, all the savings, to Adam, my cousin, the one they always called their real son. I wasn't there. Not at all. Not even a single line. My hands were shaking so much that I could barely hold the paper. I reread it 3 times, as if waiting for the letters to suddenly change into something else. But no, everything was clear, understandable, official. My parents' signatures at the bottom looked calm and even. They had no doubts. I came here by accident. I was looking for a phone charger. My cord was missing, and my mom always had a few spares lying around in the drawer by her bed. I saw the papers on the coffee table in the bedroom. My parents were muttering something about a notary over breakfast, but I didn't pay attention. I thought it was some kind of banking business. They always have a pile of papers. Insurance, taxes, some kind of bills. And here, this. I slowly put the will back on the table, trying not to leave any traces. My heart was pounding in my throat. Adam. Of course. Who else? Adam is 28. He hasn't worked a single day in his life. Well, except for 2 weeks delivering pizza, where he was fired for being constantly late, and 3 months at a call center, where he just stopped showing up after arguing with his boss. But his parents still believed he was a genius who just needed time to blossom. Every time he came to our house for Sunday lunch, my mom would light up. My dad would pat him on the shoulder and ask about his latest project. Adam would talk about startups, investments, opportunities. My parents would nod, listen intently, and I could see the pride in their eyes. And when I talked about my work, how we launched a new line of lavender-scented candles, about a successful advertising campaign on social media, about how my boss praised me. My mom just raised her eyebrows skeptically. "Candles, Charlotte? That's not a serious career. You'd better find a normal job." I've been working as a marketer at a small company that makes handmade candles for 5 years. I started as an intern, then became an assistant manager, and now I run several projects on my own. The salary isn't astronomical, about $2,000 a month, but it was enough for me. It would have been more than enough if it weren't for the bills. My parents started asking for money when I turned 20. I had just gotten a permanent job after a year of internship. My dad came into my room on Saturday morning, sat on the edge of the bed and said, "Listen, you're an adult now. You live here. You use everything. It's time to contribute your share." I didn't understand right away. I was sitting with a cup of coffee, not fully awake yet. What share? The mortgage, utilities, food. Mom and I pay for everything ourselves, and you just live here and contribute nothing. I felt something squeeze inside me. It was as if someone had tightened a belt around my chest. "Dad, I've only just started earning money. I want to save up for an apartment. I can't live here forever." He smiled, but it was a cold smile, the kind that didn't reach his eyes. "You can live here for free until you can afford your own place, or you can pay $300 a month. The choice is yours." $300 was almost half my salary at the time. I had just started saving. $100, $150 a month. I dreamed of renting at least a room in an apartment with someone in a year or 2, but $300 ruled that out. "What if I can't?" Dad stood up. "Then find somewhere else to live." I agreed. Where else could I go? Adam had already moved in with his girlfriend Jessica a year ago. They rented an apartment in the center, and their parents helped them with the deposit. Mom talked about it so proudly, as if Adam had earned the apartment himself. When they broke up 6 months later, he moved back in with his parents for 3 months, for free. Mom cooked for him separately because, you see, he doesn't eat gluten or lactose after reading some article on the internet. Dad gave him the best room, the one with windows overlooking the garden, because it's brighter there, and Adam needs inspiration to work on his next project. No one asked me if I needed inspiration. if I wanted a room with light. My room faced the neighbor's fence. My parents were never warm. Even when I was little, Mom worked in the office of some logistics company. Paperwork, boring, monotonous. She always came home tired, always irritable. My dad managed a warehouse on eBay, came home late, turned on the TV, and fell asleep on the couch without taking off his shoes. I wasn't bought toys just because. I wasn't praised for my grades. When I brought home a B, my mom would ask why it wasn't an A. When I brought home an A, she would nod and say that it was normal, that it was how it should be. I never once heard her say I was doing a good job. I started working at 16, as a waitress in a diner, then as a cashier in a supermarket. I didn't get any pocket money. My mom said it would teach me to value money, that she had earned everything herself at my age. But Adam, he got things. When he was 18, my dad gave him a laptop, an expensive, brand new one. I didn't get anything when I turned 18. I bought myself an old tablet with my savings. Adam used to come to our house regularly when I was about 12. His mother, my father's sister Lindsay, left her husband after years of unhappy marriage, and they sometimes came to visit us. Adam was 15 then, and he seemed grown up and cool to me. He wore a leather jacket, listened to rock music, and talked about wanting to be a musician. But my mom and dad looked at him as if he had brought light into the house. Dad joked with him, laughed, took him to the garage, showed him some tools. Mom baked pies especially for his visits, Charlotte apple pie, which she hadn't made for me in 5 years. I sat at the table and tried to understand what was wrong with me. Why didn't I inspire such enthusiasm? Why, when I say something, my parents look right through me. Years passed, but nothing changed. Adam could come at any time, with his problems, with his ideas, and my parents always listened to him. He could complain about the injustice of the world, about how no one gives him a chance, about how everyone around him is stupid. My parents nodded, supported him, and said he was too smart for this world. And when I tried to talk about something of my own, that it was hard for me, that I was tired, that I wanted to take a break from paying bills for at least a month to save a little more, Dad looked at me as if I had just said something disgusting. Mom and I get tired too, Charlotte. But we don't complain to anyone. That's what being an adult is all about. I stopped trying. Now I was standing in their living room with their will in my hands, and I realized that all this time I had been just an extra. Not a daughter, not part of the family, just a person who lived with them under the same roof and paid the bills. Adam got everything. The house I had invested my money in for 5 years, the savings I had helped build up. And even if he drank or gambled it all away, and he probably would, it wasn't my problem. I wasn't there. I went to my room, closed the door, and sat down on the bed. My head was spinning. My hands were still shaking. I looked at my things. The old chest of drawers I inherited from my grandmother, the bookshelf, the small table where I worked at home. All of this is mine, and nothing here belongs to them. I pulled a suitcase out from under the bed, an old blue one with worn corners, the one I took on my last trip to the sea 3 years ago. My parents were asleep. It was 2 a.m. I packed quietly and quickly, clothes, documents, cosmetics, laptop, chargers, books, everything I could carry at once. I'll leave the rest. I don't need it. When I left the house, I didn't look back. I just closed the door quietly so as not to wake them up and walk down the dark street with a heavy suitcase in my hand. They won't even hear me leaving. Melissa opened the door in her bathrobe, sleepy, with her phone in her hand. "Sharp, what happened? It's 2 a.m. I stood on the threshold with my suitcase and only now realized how crazy it looked. I just took it and left in the middle of the night. I didn't think that Melissa was asleep, that she had her own life, that I couldn't just show up like that. I'm sorry, I have nowhere to go." She woke up immediately. She moved aside and let me in. "Come in. What happened?" I couldn't answer right away. I sat down on the sofa in her living room, and something inside me finally let go. I cried, quietly trying not to make a sound, but the tears flowed, and I couldn't stop them. Melissa sat down next to me and hugged me. She didn't ask any questions. She just sat there while I cried. We met at university. We studied together in the marketing department, although Melissa dropped out after her second year and went to work in a beauty salon. Now she has her own small business. She does manicures at home and has regular clients. She earns good money. She lives alone in an apartment rented by her parents while they travel around Europe. They are retired, sold their house, and decided to travel. They've been away for 6 months now, somewhere in France or Italy. When I calmed down, I told her about the will, about Adam, about how I'm just not there. Melissa listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was silent for a long time. "They're crazy," she finally said. "Sharp, they're just sick people. Who does that to their own child?" I shrugged. I didn't know what to say. "Stay here," Melissa said. "Your parents won't be back for a month, maybe more. I have a spare room. You can stay here, calm down, and then we'll figure something out." I nodded gratefully. I didn't even have the strength to say thank you. The first few days, I just existed. I went to work, came home, lay on the bed, and stared at the ceiling. Melissa tried to get me to talk, suggested we watch something or order pizza, but I was like in a cocoon. Inside, everything was burning, but outside, there was emptiness. The phone was silent. My parents didn't call. They didn't write. No, "Where are you?" No, "What happened?" Nothing. I checked my phone every half hour. It was as if I was waiting for them to finally notice my absence, that they would become curious about where their daughter was. But there was silence. After a week, I realized that they simply didn't care. I could have disappeared forever, and they wouldn't have asked. Maybe they would have even breathed a sigh of relief, fewer problems, less discontent in the house. It hurt more than the will. I stopped paying the bills. I just didn't transfer the money when it was time. $300 remained in my account. For the first time in 5 years. I looked at the balance in the app and felt something like relief and guilt at the same time. But what would they do? Disinherit me? It wasn't mine anyway. Work became the only place where I could distract myself, immerse myself in projects, numbers, campaigns. My boss, Mark, noticed that I was acting differently, but he didn't ask. He just gave me more tasks, and I was grateful. Better to work myself to exhaustion than to think. We were just launching a new line of candles, an autumn collection with pumpkin, cinnamon, and apple scents. I was developing a social media strategy, looking for influencers to collaborate with, and creating a content plan. I buried myself in work until evening, sometimes staying until 8 or 9. Mark came over to my desk several times and asked if everything was okay. I nodded and said I just wanted to finish the project. He didn't insist, but he looked at me with doubt. One day, when I was sitting over tables with advertising metrics, he brought me coffee. "Shara, you've been working like crazy for the last 2 weeks. What's going on?" I looked at him. Mark is in his 40s. He's been with the company since the beginning, and he knows everyone. He's always been normal. He doesn't pry into personal matters, but he notices when someone is not feeling well. "Everything's fine. I just want the project to be perfect." He didn't believe me, but he didn't insist. "If anything happens, let me know. And don't stay late. Nobody needs that." I nodded, even though I knew I would stay late, because at home, there is silence and thoughts. In the evening, Melissa and I sat in the kitchen, drinking wine. She talked about her clients, about how one of them came in demanding a manicure like the Kardashians. I listened, smiled, but my thoughts were far away. "Why are they like that?" I asked suddenly. Melissa looked at me. "Who?" "My parents. Why have they never loved me?" She sighed and put down her glass. "Sharp, it's not about you. It's about them. Something inside them is broken. Normal parents don't behave like that." I wanted to believe that, but part of me still thought, maybe there really is something wrong with me. Maybe I'm not good enough, not obedient enough, not enough something. I remembered my childhood. When I was in 8th grade, I brought home a drawing I had done in art class. I drew our house, the garden, a tree. The teacher praised me and said I was talented. I was so happy I showed it to my mom. She glanced at it. Nice. Go put it away. I expected more. I expected her to smile, hug me, and say she was proud. But she just went back to her papers. A month later, Adam came to visit us. He brought a sketch of a logo for his next project. My mom hung over it, looking at it with enthusiasm, asking about the idea, the concept. Dad came over, looked at it too, and said it was cool. Adam was beaming. I sat on the stairs and watched, and something inside me broke. I realized that I would never get what they gave him. Just never. Or when I was 16 and said I wanted to study marketing. My mother grimaced. Marketing? That's not serious. You'd be better off studying economics or law. But I like marketing. You like it, she mimicked. Charlotte, life isn't about what you like. It's about making money. But when Adam said he wanted to pursue music, Dad said, Cool, son. Follow your dream. Son. He called him son, even though Adam is his nephew and I'm his biological daughter. But he never talked about me that way. I remembered all this while sitting in Melissa's kitchen, and I realized that I had always been a disappointment to them, because I didn't listen, because I had my own opinion, because I argued when they said something unfair. Adam always agreed. He always smiled, nodded, and said they were right, even if he did his own thing later. But that appearance of obedience was enough for them, and I couldn't do that. I didn't know how to lie. Maybe I should have been different, I said to Melissa. Maybe I should have given in more. Sharp, stop it. They should have loved you for who you are. That's their job as parents, and they failed at it. I wanted to argue, but I couldn't, because she was right. During those 3 weeks, I tried to get my life in order. I woke up in the morning and made coffee. Melissa bought me my favorite brand, even though she didn't drink it herself. I drove to work trying to focus on my tasks. We came home in the evening and cooked dinner together. Melissa told me about her day, and I told her about mine. We watched TV shows and laughed, but I felt like there was a sharp splinter stuck inside me. The lack of a call from my parents was becoming increasingly painful. I imagined them sitting at home, watching TV, and it didn't even occur to them that I was gone. It was as if I didn't exist. One evening, Melissa suggested going to a bar. I refused at first, but she insisted. Sharp, you need to take your mind off things. Let's just have a drink, listen to some music. Let's try to forget about the situation for a while. We went to a small bar nearby. There was live music playing, some local band, guitar, and vocals. We sat at the bar drinking cocktails. Melissa tried to make me laugh, telling me silly stories about her clients. I smiled, but inside, I still felt empty. When we were walking home, I asked, "Why am I still waiting for them to call?" Melissa stopped and looked at me. "Because you're normal, Char. You have normal feelings. You love them, even after everything. And that's normal. But they're not. They're not normal." I nodded. I wanted to believe it. 3 weeks later, a message arrived from my mom. I was on my way home from work, sitting on the subway when my phone vibrated. Transfer the money for the mortgage. No greeting. No, "How are you?" Just a demand. I stared at the screen and couldn't believe it. 3 weeks of silence, and now this. The first message. Not "Daughter, where are you?" Not "We're worried." Money. My hands were shaking as I typed my reply. I wanted to write something harsh, something hurtful, but instead I simply wrote, "No." I sent it. I waited. The reply came 2 minutes later. "Charlotte, don't be a child. We need the money. We have to pay the mortgage." Something inside me snapped. Childish? Am I a child? I typed, "I'm not paying your bills anymore." I pressed send. The phone rang immediately. "Mom," I hung up. She called again. Hung up again. A message came. "If you do this, you can't consider us your parents. We won't leave you anything." I smiled. Through my tears, but I smiled. They still think I don't know, that the will is a secret. I typed, "Let your beloved son pay." Pause. a long one. I saw her typing, then deleting, then typing again. Finally, the reply came. Adam isn't working right now. He has a project. When it takes off, it will cover all our expenses. We'll be living in luxury. Until then, you have to help. I laughed, loudly in the middle of the subway car. People turned around, but I didn't care. I wrote, "It's his inheritance. Let him pay. I don't care." I sent it and immediately blocked their numbers, my mom's and my dad's. My phone was shaking in my hands. Inside, everything was burning. Anger, pain, relief. I did it. Finally. When I got out of the subway, I called Melissa. "I blocked them," I said. "Really?" "Yes." She sighed with relief. "Finally, Shar. Finally." That evening, we sat on the balcony drinking wine. I felt something strange, like liberation, but at the same time, emptiness. It was as if the connection that had held me all these years had been severed. I was free. But did I want that freedom? "What now?" Melissa asked. I shrugged. "I don't know. Move on, I guess." She smiled. "That's not a bad plan." We sat in silence, looking at the city. Somewhere in that neighborhood, my parents realized that I would no longer be paying them, that they were left without my money, and I felt no regret, only relief, and a little sadness for what never was. 2 months flew by unnoticed. I found a one-room apartment on the outskirts of the city, an old building, a small space, but my own. The rent was reasonable, $700 a month. Without the $300 that went to my parents, I could afford it. I moved in mid-October. Melissa helped me with my things and even bought me a potted plant, a rubber tree, saying that it was undemanding and wouldn't die even if I forgot to water it. We arranged the furniture I had bought at a sale, a sofa, a table, a bed. Everything was simple, inexpensive, but mine. For the first time in my life, I was living alone, without my parents, without their comments, without the feeling that I was always doing something wrong. The silence in the apartment was strange. Sometimes it was scary, but more often than not, it was calming. I got used to my schedule. I woke up when I wanted to. I cooked what I wanted. I watched TV series until 2 in the morning if I felt like it. No one told me I was talking too loudly on the phone. No one criticized my clothes or my food choices. Work was going well. Mark finally stopped asking if everything was okay because I really did start to look better. The fall candle collection launched successfully. Sales exceeded the plan by 20%. I was praised at the general meeting. I felt proud, real pride, not mixed with the expectation of criticism. One evening, when I was coming home from work, I saw them, my parents. They were standing by my building, and I immediately knew something was wrong. Dad looked older. His shoulders were slumped, his face gray and tired. Mom, too. Bags under her eyes, her hair not as neatly styled as usual. They noticed me, and Mom stepped forward. "Charlotte, we need to talk." I stopped a few meters away from them. My heart was pounding, my hands clenched my bag. "About what?" "Let's go inside," Dad said. "Not on the street." I didn't want to let them in. I didn't want them to see my life, my space, but something in their faces made me nod. We climbed the stairs to the 4th floor. The elevator wasn't working. I opened the door. They came in, looked around. Mom grimaced when she saw the cheap furniture and peeling walls. Dad was silent. "Sit down," I said, pointing to the sofa. They sat down. I remained standing, my arms crossed over my chest. "So what did you want?" Mom looked at Dad. He sighed. "Charlotte, we want you to come home." I laughed. Not out of anger, just surprise. "Seriously?" "We can't make ends meet," Mom said quietly. "Without your money, the mortgage, the bills. It's hard for us." Something inside me rejoiced. They hadn't come because they missed me, not because they were worried. Money again. "So, what are you offering?" Dad cleared his throat. "We're willing to put you in the will, 25%. The rest goes to Adam, but you'll get something too." 25%. A quarter. of what I had helped pay for over 5 years, of the house I grew up in. I looked at them. At my mother, sitting with a tense expression, at my father, who couldn't look me in the eye, and suddenly I felt like laughing, so funny that I couldn't help myself. I laughed, loudly, sincerely. 25%? Are you serious? Mom frowned. Charlotte, don't be ungrateful. We're making you an offer. Ungrateful, I repeated, still smiling. Mom, I paid your bills for 5 years. For 5 years, I gave you 1/3 of my salary, and you're offering me 1/4 of the inheritance as if it were a favor? Dad stood up. Charlotte, don't exaggerate. You were just helping out, like an adult member of the family should. Adam is also an adult member of the family, I said, but he didn't pay anything, ever. Adam has his own path, Mom said sharply. He's working on himself, on his future, and you're just... She didn't finish, but I knew. Just selling candles. Just living your little life. Go, I said calmly. Just go. Charlotte, get out, I repeated, pointing to the door. Now. They got up. Mom wanted to say something, but Dad took her by the hand and pulled her toward the exit. When they reached the door, Mom turned around. You'll regret this, Charlotte. We're your family. I closed the door right in front of them. I didn't slam it, I just closed it. Quietly, decisively. Then I sat down on the floor, with my back to the door, and sat there for a long time. I didn't cry. I just sat there. In the evening, I lay on my bed and thought. They looked so tired, so old. Dad had always been strong. Broad shoulders, confident gait. But now he seemed broken. Mom, too, always composed, always with perfect hair. But today her hair was dry, her face without makeup. And I felt sorry for them, despite everything. Despite the pain, despite the insults, despite the years of coldness. They are my parents, and they really seemed to be drowning. I imagined them sitting at home in the dark because they hadn't paid the electricity bill, eating cheap pasta because they couldn't afford proper food. My dad unable to sleep, thinking about the mortgage. A week later, I went to see them. I didn't warn them. I just grabbed my bag and went. I knocked on the door. Mom opened it and looked at me in surprise. Charlotte, I'm coming back, I said, but on my terms. She nodded, stepped back, and let me in. I lived with them again. I slept in my old room and paid the bills again. But something had changed. I was different. I didn't try to earn their love. I didn't wait for approval. I just existed alongside them. I woke up in the morning, ate breakfast in silence, and went to work. In the evening, I came home and went to my room. We communicated minimally. Good morning. How are you? Are you coming to dinner? Everything was formal, cold. I didn't try to get closer. Neither did they. Adam came on Sundays, as usual. Mom cooked, Dad talked about work. Adam talked about his latest project. Now it was a dating app with artificial intelligence. My parents listened enthusiastically. I sat at the table, ate silently, and didn't interfere. Once, Adam turned to me. Sharp, how are you? Still selling candles? He smiled, but there was something dismissive in his tone. Yes, I replied briefly. But it's temporary, right? You don't want to do this for the rest of your life, do you? I looked at him, at his smug face, at how he sprawled in his chair as if he owned the place. I like my job, he shrugged. To each his own. Mom quickly changed the subject. I finished milking and went to my room. A week after my return, Melissa texted me in the evening. Just, watch the video, urgent. I opened the file. It was a video from the club. Dark, loud music, people dancing. The camera zooms in on the bar and I see him. Adam. He's drunk, barely standing, hugging some girl, saying something, laughing. The girl is Melissa's friend, Kate. I've seen her a couple of times. She's a journalist, writes for a local publication. The sound on the video is bad, but I can hear snippets. My aunt and uncle are so stupid. They think I work, but I just take money from them. They don't even notice. Kate laughs, asks something. Adam continues. Casinos, bars. They think I'm spending it on the project. Idiots. The video cuts off. I watched it 3 times, then a 4th time. My hands were shaking. Everything was boiling inside me. All that money, all my $300 every month. 5 years. He drank and gambled it away, not on projects, not on the future, on his own pleasure. I got up and went downstairs. My parents were sitting in the living room watching TV. I walked in with my phone in my hands. "Look at this," I said, holding out my phone. Mom took it and looked at the screen. Dad came over and looked over her shoulder. I saw their faces change. First confusion, then shock, then anger. But the anger wasn't directed at Adam. Mom threw the phone on the couch. "This is fake. I don't believe it." "What?" "Fake," she repeated sharply. "You made this video on purpose to discredit Adam." "Mom, are you listening to yourself? This is a real video from the club." "That's his voice." "That's not his voice," Dad interrupted. "Someone dubbed it, or hired someone who sounds like him. You'll do anything to get your inheritance." I stood in the middle of the living room and couldn't believe what I was hearing. Do they really think I'm capable of that? "You're crazy," I whispered. "I'm showing you the truth and you're accusing me?" Mom got up and came over to me. Her face was red, her eyes angry. "You've always been jealous of Adam. Always. You couldn't accept that he was better than you." "Better?" I laughed. "He doesn't even have a job. He drinks and gambles away your money." "You only came back here for the inheritance," Dad said coldly. "You saw that we couldn't manage without you and decided to take advantage of it. To show us this fake video so we would push Adam away. Something inside me snapped. It was as if the last bond that held us together had broken. "Do you really believe that?" I asked quietly. "Get out," Mom said. "Take your things and get out of this house." I looked at them. At my mother, who was looking at me with hatred. At my father, who stood aside with his arms crossed. "Fine," I said. "Whatever you want." I went upstairs and packed my things. This time, I took everything. Clothes, books, documents, even old photographs that were lying in a drawer. Everything that was mine. When I came down the stairs with my bags, my parents didn't come out to say goodbye. I could hear them talking in the kitchen. Their voices were quiet but tense. I left the house and closed the door. For the last time. I stood on the street and looked at the house where I had grown up, where I had lived for 25 years, and felt nothing. No regret, no sadness, just emptiness. I called a taxi and went to my apartment. Small, cheap, but mine. And there, finally, I cried. Not from pain, from relief. The first few weeks after the final breakup were strange. I would wake up in the morning and forget for a moment what had happened. Then the memory would come back. Their faces, my mother's words, the feeling that I had been hit, and I would lie there, staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out what to do next. Work saved me. Mark gave me a new project, launching a winter collection of candles with scents of pine needles, gingerbread, mulled wine. I threw myself into work, developing a strategy, designing layouts for social media, looking for photographers. Sometimes I stayed at the office until 8 or 9. Mark would come up to my desk and gently remind me that I should go home. "You have a personal life, Shar, remember?" I smiled, nodded, but stayed for another hour. I had no personal life. Just work, apartment, sleep. Sometimes Melissa would drag me out to dinner or the movies. She tried to cheer me up, telling me about her clients, about some crazy wedding ceremony where she did the bride's manicure right in front of the altar. I laughed, but inside I still felt empty. My parents didn't call. They didn't write. I unblocked their numbers a week after leaving, but there were no messages. It was as if I didn't exist. At first, it hurt. Then I stopped checking my phone every hour. Then I stopped thinking about them altogether. A month later, I signed up for yoga. A small studio 2 blocks from home, classes 3 times a week in the evening. I had never been serious about sports. I went to the gym a couple of times but quickly gave up. But yoga was different. quiet music, dim lighting, the instructor's voice guiding us through the exercises. I concentrated on my breathing, on my movements, and my head finally fell silent. After class, I felt something like peace. Not happiness, but at least the absence of constant tension. One evening after yoga, a girl approached me. She had light brown hair tied back in a ponytail and a sincere smile. "Hi, I'm Hannah. I've been seeing you here for a few weeks now. Are you new?" I nodded. "Yes, I started a month ago." "Cool. I've been coming for a year. If you want, we can practice together, and I'll show you some poses." We started talking. Hannah worked as a teacher in an elementary school and lived nearby. She was easygoing and carefree, telling funny stories about her students. We sometimes went for coffee after yoga, sat in a small cafe, and talked about everything and nothing. She didn't ask about my family, and I was grateful to her for that. A new person also appeared at work, not a colleague, a client. His name was Ethan. He was 32, and he was opening a coffee shop in the city center. He came to us to order candles for the interior. Mark asked me to meet with him to discuss the details. I agreed, not thinking much of it. Just another meeting with another client. We met at our office. Ethan was tall and thin, wearing jeans and a sweater. He had slightly unkempt dark hair and thin-framed glasses. He smiled when I approached and held out his hand. "Ethan Collins, thank you for your time." "Charlotte, tell me about your project." We sat down at the conference table, and he told me about his coffee shop. He wanted to create a place where people could work, read, or just sit and do nothing. Cozy and warm. Candles were to be part of the atmosphere, something soft and unobtrusive. The aroma of coffee, vanilla, maybe a little cinnamon. I listened and took notes. He spoke enthusiastically, gesturing, and I could see that this was not just a business for him. It was something personal. "Sounds great," I said when he finished. "We can make a few options and you can choose the one that suits you best." "Great. When can we meet again? I'd like to discuss the label design and packaging." We agreed to meet the following week. When he left, Mark approached me with a smile. "He's cute, isn't he?" I rolled my eyes. "Mark, he's a client." "I'm just saying." But something inside me agreed. He was cute. Not in the classic sense, but there was a certain lightness and sincerity about him. We met several more times. We discussed the details of the project. I showed him the mock-ups, and he gave feedback. Sometimes the conversation turned to other topics. He talked about his love of coffee, how he once worked as a barista in Seattle, and dreamed of having his own place. I talked about my work, about candles, about how I accidentally got into this field and unexpectedly stayed. Once, as we were finishing another meeting, he asked, "Hey, would you like to go for coffee? Not for work, just because." I hesitated. I didn't know if I was ready for that, for communication, for new people, for the possibility of someone getting closer. "I don't know, Ethan. I'm going through a difficult period right now." He nodded without insisting. "I understand, but if you change your mind, let me know. I'm always up for coffee." He smiled, and I suddenly found myself smiling too. A week later, I texted him. Just, "Coffee?" He replied in a minute. When and where? We met at a small coffee shop near the park. We sat at a table by the window, drank cappuccino, and talked. He didn't ask about my family or pry into my personal life. He just talked about himself, how he grew up in a small town, how he moved to the city at 20, worked odd jobs until he figured out what he wanted to do, how hard it is to start your own business, how many permits, inspections, sleepless nights. I listened and felt that it was easy for me with him. He didn't judge, he didn't give advice, he was just there. When I told him about my parents, not everything but the general picture, he just nodded. I understand. I also have a difficult relationship with my father. He wanted me to become a lawyer like him, but I opened a coffee shop. He still thinks I've wasted my life. How do you cope? He shrugged. I live my life, not his. It's the only way to stay sane. I thought about that, about how many years I had tried to live in a way that my parents would approve of, how I chose my job, my clothes, my friends, thinking about what they would say, and how pointless it was. Love cannot be earned. It is either given or not. And I spent 25 years trying to earn something I would never be given. Ethan became part of my life without me noticing. We met for coffee once a week, then more often. Sometimes we went to the movies, sometimes we just walked in the park. He didn't rush me or pressure me. He was just there when I was having a hard time. Once, when we were sitting on a bench in the park, I suddenly started crying. For no reason. The tears just started flowing, and I couldn't stop them. Ethan didn't ask what was wrong. He just hugged me and held me while I cried. "I'm sorry," I said when I calmed down. "I don't know what came over me." "Don't apologize. It's okay." I looked at him, at his calm face, at his hand still resting on my shoulder, and suddenly realized that I wasn't alone, that there were people around me who cared about me, not because I did anything for them, but simply because I existed. Work was also going well. The winter collection launched successfully, sales were breaking records. Mark offered me a promotion, senior marketer, higher salary, more responsibility. I agreed. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was moving forward, that I was building something of my own. Sometimes I thought about my parents. I wondered how they were doing, whether they had managed to pay their bills, whether Adam was still deceiving them. But these thoughts were brief and superficial. They no longer hurt. I was living. I went to work, met with friends, with Ethan. I read books, watched TV series, tried new recipes, small joys that I had never even thought about before, because I was always preoccupied with thoughts about my parents, about how to please them. One evening, 6 months after I left, there was a knock at my door. I opened it and froze. My parents. Both of them. They looked even worse than last time. Mom had lost weight and had deep shadows under her eyes. Dad was stooped, his hair gray. "Charlotte," Mom said quietly, "can we come in?" I didn't answer right away. I stood in the doorway looking at them, feeling nothing. No anger, no pity, just emptiness. "Why are you here?" "We want to talk," Dad said. "Please." I stepped aside and let them in. They came in and sat down on the sofa. I remained standing. "We were wrong," Mom began. Her voice trembled. We checked up on Adam. We followed him. And you were right. He was spending money on clubs, on casinos. He was lying to us." Dad nodded. "We're sorry, Charlotte. We didn't believe you when we should have. We were blind." I listened and waited to feel something. Triumph, relief, satisfaction. But there was nothing. "What now?" I asked. Mom stood up and walked over to me. "We want you to forgive us. We want to start over. We love you, Charlotte." Love. The word I'd been waiting for my whole life, and now it sounded empty. I looked at her, at my father, who was sitting with his head down, and I realized that I didn't need their apology. I didn't need their love. It was too late. "Cool," I said calmly. "Good luck." Mom didn't understand. "What?" "Good luck. With your life. With Adam. With everything." "Charlotte, we're asking for forgiveness. I heard you, and I don't forgive you. Not now. Maybe never. Please leave." Dad stood up and looked at me. "Are you really not going to give us a chance?" "You didn't give me a chance for 25 years, I replied. "Why should I give you one?" They stood there silently. Then Mom nodded, turned, and walked to the door. Dad followed her. At the threshold, Mom turned around. "If you change your mind—" "I won't change my mind," I said and closed the door. I stood in the middle of the apartment, looked at the closed door, and felt something let go. The last connection, the last hope that they would change. I let go, and it became easier. The year flew by unnoticed. It was as if I blinked and suddenly found myself in a different life. Sometimes I caught myself thinking that this wasn't my reality, that somewhere else there was another Charlotte who still lived with her parents, paid their bills, and tried to earn their love. But this Charlotte is real. Me. My job changed dramatically. After the success of the winter collection, management noticed me. Mark offered me the position of marketing manager, a small team of 3 people, a higher salary, more freedom in decision-making. I agreed, although I was afraid. I was afraid that I wouldn't be able to cope, that I would let people down. But Mark believed in me. "Shar, you're the best at what you do. Just keep doing it. Only now with a team." The first few months were difficult. I learned to delegate, to trust others, to make decisions without constant approval from above. But gradually, I got used to it. My team was young and energetic. We launched a spring collection with floral scents and a summer collection with marine notes. Sales grew, and the company expanded. One day, the director called me into her office. I came with trembling knees, thinking I had done something wrong, but she just smiled and said, "Charlotte, we are happy with your work. You have really changed the company's approach to marketing. We want to offer you shares. It's a small stake, but you'll become a co-owner." I couldn't believe it. I asked her to repeat it twice. She laughed. "Yes, I'm serious. You deserve it." Deserved it. The word I had been looking for my whole life, and I got it not from my parents, but from people who saw my work, my efforts. I left the office and called Ethan. He answered after the second ring. "Hi, what's going on?" "I've been offered shares," I exhaled. "I'm going to be a co-owner." He laughed, sincerely, joyfully. "Sharp, that's awesome. Congratulations. Shall we celebrate today?" We celebrated. We went to a restaurant I had always wanted to try but could never afford. We ordered wine, steaks, dessert. Ethan raised his glass. To you finally seeing how awesome you are." I laughed, but inside I felt warm. Ethan and I had been together for a year. We didn't become a couple right away. At first, we just hung out, talked, and gradually grew closer. He didn't rush things, and I was grateful for that. I needed time to figure out what I wanted, how I felt, whether I was ready for something serious. 6 months after we first met, he asked if I wanted to be with him officially. We were sitting in his coffee shop. It was already open, and the place turned out to be cozy and warm, just as he had dreamed. I looked at him, at his sincere face, at his hands nervously twisting a napkin, and realized that I wanted to. "Yes," I said simply, "I want to." He smiled so broadly that I couldn't help myself either. My relationship with him was different. It wasn't perfect. We argued sometimes. He could be too focused on work and forget about our plans. I could withdraw into myself when things were difficult and not say what was wrong. But he didn't try to control me. He didn't tell me how to live, what to do, or who to talk to. He was just there. Once, when we argued over something minor, he forgot that we had agreed to meet for dinner and stayed late at a coffee shop. I yelled at him. I said he was selfish, that he didn't care. He listened silently, then said, "You're right. I'm sorry. I really did forget, and it's my fault. But don't say that I don't care. You are the most important person in my life." I cried, not because I was offended, but because he didn't brush it off or accuse me of exaggerating. He just admitted his mistake. "I'm sorry," I said. "I overreacted." He hugged me. "It's okay. We're learning." A year after we became a couple, Ethan suggested we move in together. He had a 2-bedroom apartment in the center, closer to his coffee shop. It was bigger and brighter than mine. "I'm not pressuring you," he said, "but if you want to, move in. I'm happy with you." I agreed. Not right away. I thought about it for a week, weighing the pros and cons. I was afraid of losing my independence, my space. But then I realized that Ethan wasn't the type to take away my freedom. He supports it. The move was easy. I took my things and arranged them in the new apartment. Ethan cleared half of the closet for me, put my favorite tea in the kitchen, and bought me a separate shelf for my books. "This is your home too," he said. "Do whatever you want." We lived together, and it was different than with my parents. There was no tension, no constant comments, no feeling that I was always doing something wrong. We cooked together, watched movies, sat in silence, each with our own laptop, and it was normal. Sometimes I caught myself thinking that I was happy. Real, simple happiness. Not euphoria, not an explosion of emotions, just peace, the feeling that I was in the right place. Contact with my parents was minimal. They wrote sometimes. My mom sent short messages on holidays, on my birthday. "Congratulations. How are you?" I replied politely, briefly. "Thank you. Everything's fine." Nothing more. They tried to establish contact, I could see that, but I didn't want to go back. I didn't want to feel used and devalued again. I set clear, firm boundaries and stuck to them. Once my mother called. I didn't answer the phone 4 times, but on the 5th try I picked it up. "Hello? Charlotte? It's Mom. How are you?" Her voice was timid, cautious. "Fine. What do you need?" "Nothing. I just wanted to hear your voice. Dad and we miss you." Something inside me twitched, but I held back my emotions. "I understand." Pause. I could hear her breathing on the other end, trying to find the words. "We're really sorry, Charlotte, about everything, about how we treated you, about the will, about Adam. We were wrong." "Yes," I said calmly, "you were. Maybe we could meet? Talk?" I thought about it. Part of me wanted to see them, to give them a chance, but most of me knew it was pointless. They wouldn't change. Maybe they regret it now. But what about in a year? In 2? I'll become convenient for them again, and it will all happen again. "No, Mom, I'm not ready." "When will you be ready?" "I don't know. Maybe never." She sighed. "I understand. But if you change your mind, we're here." "Okay. Bye." I hung up the phone and felt relieved. Not guilty, not sad, just relieved. Melissa supported me. We still met often, went for coffee, had lunch together. She knew the whole story and understood why I didn't want to go back to my parents. "You're doing great, Char," she said once. "A lot of people can't let go of a toxic family, but you did. That's strength." I didn't feel strong, just tired of fighting. I found out about Adam by accident. My mother mentioned him in one of her messages. Something like, "Adam doesn't come to see us anymore." I didn't ask for details. I wasn't interested. But Melissa once told me that she saw him in a bar, drunk, alone, trying to borrow money from her. She refused. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel sorry for him, just indifference. He made his choice, just as I made mine. One evening, a year after moving in with Ethan, I was sitting on the balcony with a cup of coffee. It was warm, springtime. The city below was bustling, but here, on the 8th floor, it was quiet. Ethan was inside, preparing dinner. I could hear him muttering to himself and clattering pots and pans. I thought about my life, about how it had changed in 2 years, how I left home with nothing but a suitcase and resentment, how I was afraid I wouldn't be able to cope, how slowly, step by step, I built something new. I didn't become rich. I didn't get spectacular revenge on my parents. I didn't get the apologies I once wanted, not real, sincere ones that would have changed everything. But I became free. True freedom is not when everyone loves you. It's when you choose for yourself who to give your love to, who to let into your life and who to keep at a distance. Family is not just blood. It's those who are there for you when times are tough. Those who support you without expecting anything in return. Melissa, Ethan, Hannah, my team at work, they became my family, my real family. I let go of my resentment, not immediately, not in a day or a month. Gradually, like letting go of something heavy that you've been holding onto for too long. At first it hurts, then it gets easier, and then you don't feel the weight at all. My parents made their choice. I made mine. And I don't regret it. Ethan came out onto the balcony and brought me a plate of pasta. "Eat while it's hot." I smiled and took the plate. "Thank you." He sat down next to me and put his arm around my shoulders. We sat in silence, looking at the city, and I didn't need anything else. Sometimes I think about those people who still live in toxic families, who try to earn love they will never receive, who sacrifice themselves for others, forgetting about themselves. And I want to tell them, you deserve better. You deserve love, respect, support. And if your family doesn't give you that, you have the right to leave, to build a new life, to find people who will appreciate the real you. This is not selfishness. This is self-preservation. For a long time, I believed that I was missing something, that I wasn't good enough, obedient enough, something. But the problem wasn't me. The problem was them. My parents, who didn't know how to love, in a system where love had to be earned, not given freely. I let them go, and I became myself, the real me, not the one others wanted to see. Ethan kissed me on the temple. "What are you thinking about?" "How lucky I am." He smiled. "Me too." We sat on the balcony until it got dark. The city lit up with lights, and the wind brought the smell of spring and flowers. Somewhere in that neighborhood, my parents were living their lives, without me, and I was without them. And that was okay. I often wonder if I will ever be able to forgive them. Maybe. They say time heals all wounds, but forgiveness doesn't mean going back. I can forgive, but I won't forget, and I won't let them hurt me again. My boundaries are strong now. I'm learning to say no. I'm learning to put myself first without feeling guilty. I'm learning to live for myself, not for other people's expectations. And you know what's most surprising? I like this life. I'm happier than ever. Not because everything is perfect. I have problems, fears, doubts. But I am real, and that is more valuable than any approval. If you had asked me 2 years ago if I could leave, I wouldn't have believed it. I thought I was tied to them forever, that without them, I was nothing. But it turned out that without them, I am me, finally. So I sit on the balcony with a cup of coffee, with the person who loves me, with the job I like, with the life I chose for myself. And I have no regrets. Could you let go of those who don't appreciate you, even if they are your family? Are you ready to put yourself first, even if it hurts? Will you find the strength to leave when love becomes toxic? I did, and it was the best choice of my life.